And so what is the good news from the Tanakh? Because that's what they were preaching, this kingdom, Yeshua being the authority of said kingdom, the emissaries being ambassadors of said kingdom. Now I'm going to make some statements of what is the good news from the Tanakh, from the Old Testament. I'm not going to give you the scriptures today for time's sake, but if you want to, this is the teaching I did where all the statements I'm going to say, what the good news from the Old Testament or the Tanakh is, I go through all the scriptures backing those statements up. But for the sake of time, I don't want to read it. It's a whole teaching. And even that teaching, it's scraping the surface. It really is scraping the surface. But all these statements I'm about to make, if you want the scriptures behind them, go watch that teaching. So what is part of this good news? The daughter of Zion will be liberated. Jerusalem, the daughter of Jerusalem, the house of Israel. Is Jerusalem right now free and everything's just grand? No. There's issues in Jerusalem today, right? To put it mildly. The good news that Elohim reigns. Not that he will reign, that he does reign. Remember that Yeshua said, all authority is being given to me. The Lamb is sat on the throne. He has the power to open the seals of the book of Revelation. That Elohim does reign. It's just that in the age to come, he will interface with his creation. The promise of Messiah. Isaiah 53, this is where Philip started with the eunuch because he happened to be reading the scroll. I believe Philip took the eunuch on a wonderful scriptural journey throughout the prophets and the Torah. Messiah will sprinkle the nations. That's the end of Isaiah 52. You may have it as the Messiah will startle the nations, but the word can also mean to sprinkle. And it's priestly language. What do you sprinkle? Something you are cleansing. What are we cleansed by? The blood of the Lamb. Messiah will enact the eschatological jubilee. So what's the jubilee all about? The restoration of land to its rightful owner. There's liberating of the captives. You have been set free from prison. Now we're being set free from death. We're being set free from the penalty of sin. But there's going to be the fulfillment of the Jubilee that Messiah will be the one to enact. Now, as part of that is this point. As king, he will enact righteousness and right ruling as part of his enthronement. It was very common in the ancient Near East that when a king became king, he would do righteousness and right ruling. Even pagan nations did this. So people that had been unlawfully imprisoned, or that they set the record straight. And when you read prophecies and the Torah especially regarding the Jubilee, it's got this idea of doing righteousness and right ruling. And when Messiah will sit on his throne, this is exactly what he will do. And this is written all over the prophets. We see that Israel will be rebuilt. Once again, they shall dwell in their land. We see that nations will serve Israel. This is why it's so important to know what Scripture defines as Israel, not what the UN or religion define as Israel. The faithful will be priests and servants of Elohim. Go read Isaiah 61. Priests of Elohim shall be said of you, which is then the fulfillment of the oath the vow that Elohim made. If you obey my commands, then you shall be a kingdom of priests to me. Elohim will institute an everlasting covenant with Israel, the house of Israel. And it's actually the renewal of the original covenant. The only difference being that now that covenant will be written on their hearts. We see that Elohim will regather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. We see Elohim actually making an oath there. He says, I will regather you. Though I scattered you, I will regather you. You who were far off, you've been brought near by the blood of the Lamb. We see that the house of Israel will be given their land back. We see that Messiah the King will rule over them. In fact, he'll rule over the earth. We see that Israel will be reunited with Elohim. People miss that. And it's right there in the prophets. He says, once again, Jerusalem will be it will be the place of my throne. Elohim will select a bride from the house of Israel. That's a whole teaching series there. And then some. That's a journey. One of the ones that people miss is Israel will no longer be idolatrous. There will be no more spiritual adultery. In fact, it says that the house of Israel will blush and weep over her spiritual adultery. And I believe this is what we're starting to realize now as we wake up to his truth. We're realizing we were in bed deep in the whorehouse. And that's not my verbiage, that's Elohim's verbiage. We see that this covenant will be everlasting, and it's actually the everlasting covenant of peace. And to make the point, Elohim said, he ties it to the movement of the heavenly bodies. He says, if the heavenly body, the laws of the heavens were to change, then I would break off my covenant with the house of Israel. So this is why I say the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua is not the good news. It's what makes the good news possible. So I'm not demeaning the death, burial, and resurrection. In fact, I believe this gives it greater glory. Without his death, there is no gospel. But I'll go as far as saying without his death and resurrection, existence ceases. Existence. Everything we think of as the universe, gone. Because of an oath that Elohim made. Elohim took accountability, responsibility, and paid the consequences. All of this will be fulfilled because of an oath that Elohim made.